Hello, my name is Emily Zipprich, and as some of you are aware, I'm currently getting my master's degree in special education through the University of Kansas Online. This particular class that I am in right now is about communicating with families and interpersonal communication and the benefits that it has in the teaching profession. And this week's module, Mrs. Robinson has asked me to pull out one item or one thing that I thought could help us as a staff when dealing with students, and the topic that I've chosen is to talk to you about questioning format and how the format of questions is important. The information from this presentation is taken from the book called Interactions by Marilyn Friend and Cook, and the part on page 87, they talk about how the formatting of questions is important, and that the way that questions are worded can greatly affect the answers that students give. So if things are worded incorrectly or if they're worded in a confusing manner, sometimes students may not understand what's being asked of them. And there are three basic ways to format questions. You can do direct and indirect questions, you can do open and closed questions, or you can ask single questions or multiple questions. Direct and indirect questioning is the first type of questioning format that is used when asking questions. And direct questions are the most commonly asked questions, and a lot of times tend to take on an interrogative formula or format, and not everyone's always comfortable with that. Direct questions are specific and focused on a particular topic. When direct questions are asked, a clear answer is anticipated or expected to be given, and oftentimes direct questions can be seen as rude or inappropriate because not everyone knows how to react to direct questions. On the other hand, indirect questions are often vague and sometimes can be phrased like a question. So when that happens, sometimes people don't always know if there is a question being asked or how to answer it, because it's more like a statement and a rhetorical question, and they don't know how to answer it specifically. Oftentimes indirect questions are used as a way not to offend different cultural groups. Sometimes people don't always know how to take direct questions, so people may phrase their questions as not to offend certain cultural groups in a mixed setting. And finally, indirect questions could be seen or taken as sometimes as a command rather than a question, and those aren't always received in a positive manner. The second format of questioning is open and closed questions. An open question allows for any number of possibilities and responses. These would be like open-ended questions or open response questions on like an essay or something. They give the person answering the question more power because they do tend to be subjective, so they can put more information in those. It takes more time to answer them because they are subjective, and a lot of times people do add their own information or their own experiences into open-ended questions. And open questions are less threatening because you're not directing anything specifically at them, or people can choose what they're going to answer or how to answer those questions. On the other hand, closed questions limit the type of answers that are given. They're easier and quicker to answer. Usually I find that students like to answer those kind of questions much more than the open-ended because they're usually shorter and they don't have to write as much. The question asker, whoever created the questions, has more control because they're very narrow or very limited, or leading. They can be curt, and they can also allow for misunderstanding of the context. And they use limited choices to help closed question be more effective. And the third and final question format is single or multiple questioning format. This one I think is probably something that we all as teachers need to think about. I found this one of the terms that stuck out to me this week in the text that I was reading, and that most people prefer to answer single questions rather than multiple questions. Asking more than one question doesn't help someone understand what they're supposed to do better. It just throws a bunch more information at them. People usually ask multiple questions because while they're talking, they're thinking up more information, or they're thinking up more questions to be asked. They try to progress from vague questions up to more specific questions that they want answers to, and sometimes people are asked multiple questions or give multiple questions because of time constraints on lessons or testing or whatever. A lot of times with multiple questions, it leaves people, adults and kids, confused at what they actually are supposed to answer. So, what part of the question am I supposed to answer? Which part do I put first? And so on. And a lot of times it is hard to remember all the things that need to be answered and make sure that all questions are addressed. So how do we ask better questions? Friend and Cook offer some answers or some options. They say decide what kind of response you want for your questions before you start to ask them. Consider your relationship with the person answering the questions. If it's a closer relationship, then you can tend to ask more intimate questions, or get in there and really find out. But know the cultural makeup of the group that you're asking and understand differences in that sense. Use a balance of open and closed questions, and when appropriate, include direct and indirect questions to kind of mix things up. Don't get monotonous when you're asking questions. Ask one question at a time and give time for thought and to create a well-constructed response. Ask questions in a logical manner. Don't just kind of bounce all over the place. Put them chronological order, or if you're about a book, in the events, what comes before the climax, the anticipation, the climax, and then the descending things. And then know the situation and recognize what type of question format will be best. So what does this all mean? How can this help the students in your classroom, especially with those with disabilities? That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here to try to help. That's what Mrs. Robinson wanted me to do, is to kind of help you communicate better with your students. So students with processing disorders may not have enough time to think and construct quality information or quality answers. So that's why it's really important that the students are given enough time. Sometimes their IEPs indicate that they get extended time on tests or essays because they really do need that think time. Students with processing disorders or reading struggles may not comprehend what is being asked of them, so they may not understand which question they're supposed to answer. So giving them that extra time, allowing them to, kind of process the words. If decoding and fluency and comprehension are all struggles that they have, then answering questions on a test is going to be difficult for them. That's why some of them get the test read to them. That's why some take them in smaller settings, because all of those things can get in the way of answering questions. Students who struggle with written expression may not be able to put their ideas onto paper, especially if the questions are vague, numerous, or they're too narrow or too broad. Knowing what questions that they have to answer is possibly an issue enough, but skipping a question or not getting all of the questions answered when they're writing can also be an issue. And then finally, students with emotional or behavior disorders may feel they're being interrogated or targeted if questions are too direct. They may feel that somebody is, attacking them or, interrogating them, and they may lash out, be defiant in a way because they feel that they're being threatened if their, direct questions are used. If questions are too indirect, they may feel they're being commanded to do something, and students with behavior and emotional disorders do not like that commanding. It's that some of them with the oppositional defiance really fight out against this. And then finally, they may feel they're disrespected if the questions may seem rude. If they're too direct, they may shut down completely and just be turned off from the situation if the questions are not appropriate. So when dealing with students with disabilities, all of these things are things to keep in mind, whether it's a processing issue, a written expression issue, or if they have an emotional behavior disorder. Think about the questions that you're asking, and take the time to really know the students to decide whether the questions are appropriate for the group that you're using them for. Thank you.